I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is the moment of silence. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason.
Present.
Trustee Reinders. Trustee McNaughton.
Present.
Trustee Consolino.
Present.
Trustee Fialco.
Present.
Trustee Stylen.
Present.
Mayor Knightsky-Troicki.
Present. Next on the agenda is community recognition, which we do not have any this evening. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. Next is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Trustee Mason?
I will second.
Trustee Fialco. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to approval of the minutes. May 22nd, 2024, Village Board meeting. Is there a minute, or is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mason?
And I will second it.
Trustee Fialco? Trustee Mason, do you have any comments?
I do not.
Trustee Fialco, do you? Is there any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Fialco.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Motion carries. June 12th, 2024, Village Board meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll also make that motion.
Trustee Mason? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee McNaughton? Trustee Mason, do you have any comments?
No, ma'am.
Trustee McNaughton?
No, ma'am.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Fialco.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is public comment. I ask that everybody keep their comments to 3 minutes. It looks like we got a full one today. First up, Mr. Walters.
Okay, I'm going to start off with something a little different. George Washington actually kept a prayer journal. I was looking through the prayer journal. I found this one to read for today. Let the bright beams of thy light so shine into my heart and enlighten my mind and understanding thy blessed word, that I may be enabled to perform thy will in all things, and effectively resist all temptation of the world, the flesh, and of the devil. Preserve and defend our rulers in church and state. Bless the people of this land. Be a father to the fatherless, a comforter to the comfortless, a deliverer to the captives, and a physician to the sick. Let these blessings guide this day and forever through Jesus Christ, in whose blessed form of prayer I conclude my weak petitions, our Father and Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Next, we have a duo, Mr. Lou Zemke and Ed Kerfin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor and trustees, I am the commander of American Legion Post 2011. I came by tonight to give you a little synopsis of the last 6 months, which I try to do every year, keep you posted, because we are your American Legion. So far this year, our membership has grown to 44. And although that don't seem like a lot, when we started with 16, it's a lot. And because of your help, we have grown. We still haven't reached all of the veterans in Homer Glen. I know there's more. I need your help to get the word out. We got to reach 50 by the end of the year. That's our goal. In addition to that, we had a couple of fundraisers. One was very successful, and that was the Poppy Drive. And I want to thank the board, mayor, the board, and all residents of Homer Glen for their generous support of the Poppy Drive. We made over $8,000. Now, What we take in for the Legion, I need everybody to understand, we keep no money. All money that we take in is given out to either veterans groups or other needy organizations that are brought to our attention. So to date, we have given out $15,000. Our goal is 20. I'm confident we will reach that. Unfortunately, I will have to step down as commander tonight. All you guys know Ed Kerfin, so he will have no trouble working with you. Our new commander, Ed Kerfin.
Hi, thank you. So needless to say, I'm very honored to be the new commander for the American Legion located at Marion Village. Our goal is to hopefully strengthen our relationship with the board here. Mayor Christina, thank you, and everybody else here on the board. And we're lucky enough to have a great Legion at Marion Village. And they've opened their arms to us. They're doing some other things to help us to recruit, but we do want to recruit. We're bringing all kinds of new ideas, new things to the Legion. So if anybody has any questions or wants to talk or see what we do, you know, we're an open book. Please let me know. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next is Michael Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Michael Rodriguez, and I've been a Homer Glen resident since 1994. I live at 12640 West Hank Court in Derby Hills subdivision. My purpose tonight is to talk about my concerns regarding the expansion. I think it's on your item list as number 4 for the approval of the orthodontics parking lot expansion. Our backyard is approximately 100 yards from where the expansion is going to occur if it's approved. My wife and I, we don't support that expansion ourselves. I'm sure a few of our neighbors don't either. There may be we have concerns about runoff from rainwater, other types of spillover, pollution from the lights and the noise and all that stuff. So we have a concern regarding that. You know, in general, I think we all have wants and needs. I think we could all agree with that. We have wants and we have needs. For example, I want a steak dinner tonight. Do I need a steak dinner tonight? No. But an example more recently is we had a party in our backyard, a bridal shower for my son and his future wife. As a good neighbor, we were trying to clean things up, and I asked my neighbor if we could paint his wooden fence. And it was kind of in, bad shape. So I communicated with him, we talked, and he said, okay, no problem. He said he would pay for the paint. I said, no need, it's my ask, I want this. My wife wanted it done, and so he said, yeah, no problem. So we did it. So we try to be good neighbors. To my knowledge, no one from the orthodontics office has come to the folks, at least my house, in our house, home I should say, to talk about what their plans are. I don't think they have to do that, to tell you the truth, legally, but to be a good neighbor, you would try to communicate with the people that impact you and are surrounding your residents and whatnot. So whether or not it's a want or a need, I don't know. So, I become a little, unknowing about that, whether it is a want or a need. So that's all I really wanted to say.
30
just
seconds.
Express my concern, and I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay.
Ms. Janet Modelski.
Hello. So we have been to many of the village and planning meetings for the town center. Similar themes are stormwater, EPA, trees, protection of the environment, conservation, expansion of roadways. These concerns were at play when discussing the passing of the Civic Center last week, or on the 24th. There was concern about grinding, stormwater, EPA, and not wanting to live near this project. But those concerns do not seem to carry over into the Booth project. At the July 24th meeting, we submitted the original plat of survey from 1984, which states on the bottom portion of the plat 0% chance of flooding with no development, with development 49%. We submitted the ordinance notes from the 2012 Village of Homer Glen meeting, granting variances from the Water Resource Management to Will County for 2 detention ponds to provide stormwater detention for roadway improvements on 143rd Street. Improvements that are still ongoing and will eventually be in front of my building and Booth Orthodontics building. The variances were requested in order to obtain the required storage volume and the maximum depth of water within the limits of the detention ponds. The variance also sought to preserve the high-quality natural areas of the site. The document also states the applicant shall at all times comply with the terms and conditions of the variances and ends with, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its passage, approval, and publication as required by law. The variances were adopted on February 14, 2012 with a vote of 6-0, headed by Mayor James Daley and 6 elected trustees. The project that is being proposed does not fit into these guidelines. It is clearly destroying the natural habitat as well as displacing animals, and frankly does not belong in a detention pond. Several of the trustees mentioned earlier that they are pro-business. Obviously, so are we, but at what cost? Expanding a business parking lot that will negatively affect the value of the surrounding houses, possibly creating flooding issues along with cost of flood insurance. How is the expansion of a parking lot improving anyone's quality of life? It was previously stated that a trustee would not want to live by the Civic Center with the septic tanks. I asked, would you want to look at a parking lot with a retention wall 10 foot high? It was also stated that Dr. Booth had outgrown his parking lot. That is not the case. His parking lot was small before it even opened. There was insufficient parking to begin with, and only due to the fact that we allowed his staff to park in our lot, allowing his clients to park and deliveries to take place on that establishment, was able to continue. As noted, the property was taken from us and was condemned. In the sale papers, it was stated that certain parcels of surplus public real estate acquired by condemnation, but there is no record that the condemnation was reversed. It also states that the property is being sold as is, and the county makes no representation of the condition of the property. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Richard Modelsky.
Thank you. If I may make one request, I guess our lawyer Sandra is running a little late. She's supposed to speak after me. Is it possible that she gets moved to the bottom of the list? Thank you. Again, the last time we were here before this board, I sat in amazement as Booth Orthodontics lawyer asked for a continuance because they were promised a full 6-panel trustee board in the presence of the mayor. My question is, how were they granted so much access to this governing board that they even knew what the final proposal and description of the project? We have asked this board a couple times for the final proposal, for the land description of the new proposal and how it was. And why were 6 trustees good enough to vote on the Homer Township Civic Center and not on this project? We invited all the trustees to look over the land and meet us at our property. Only 2 showed. I watched in amazement as the Homer Township Civic Center was voted on. Water, grindings, trees were the hot topic. When it comes to the Booth project, it doesn't seem to matter, like water retention, trees, laws prohibiting building on detention ponds, and legal contracts mean much of anything. One trustee said he was pro-business. I asked, does any business bring in hundreds of people into Homer Glen who use bars, restaurants, gas stations, sandwich shops, and grocery shops more than a funeral home? How many tax dollars do we bring into this community? Also, one trustee spoke glowingly of his relationship with Dr. Booth. His child was a patient. I believe that's called a conflict of interest. Recently, I spoke to the former mayor of Homer Glen, who was at a funeral. He told me there is no way that if he was mayor, this project would ever be passed. He said that from day one, the village has had a water problem, and this project would just exacerbate the problems. Finally, I question whether the construction manager of this project was not on the Planning Commission, whether all the laws that have bent and broken and all the variances needed we would ever be at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra was next, so we'll move her down. Dr. Barry Booth.
Good evening. I have not taken the opportunity to speak in the last two meetings, so I thought I'd take this meeting, just make a few brief comments if I could. Again, we started our practice in 1986. This is our 38th year serving Homer Glen community. We purchased the land where our existing office is in 1993 and started construction of the existing office in 2000. We've always tried to be respectful, professional orthodontic practice with the highest standards of care for our patients. Booth Orthodontics has been a supportive member of Homer Glen by sponsoring Homer Fest since its inception. We are a sponsor of the Homer Glen Little League. We hold an annual fundraiser for the Conyer Christian Forever Foundation. He's a deceased Lockport High School baseball player. It's to support brain cancer awareness. And we participate every year in the Homer Glen Trunk and Treat at Halloween. In 2008, Booth Orthodontics started a foundation called Smile for a Lifetime. That foundation treats at no cost children whose family cannot afford orthodontic treatment. And we continue to do that to this day. Booth Orthodontics loves Homer Glen. We feel very fortunate to be part of the community here. We've thrived in this community. We'd like to continue to thrive as the next generation of Booth orthodontists take over from me since I'm recently retired. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Booth? I'm sorry, Dr. Ryan Booth?
Hello, I'm Ryan Booth. I joined my dad in practice back in 2017 after graduating ortho residency. I truly love practicing Homer Glen, and I plan on doing so for my entire career. I'll always remember the warm welcome and support I received from this community when I first joined my father in practice. My brother, Dr. Evan, recently joined me in practice in May 2024, which has been a great thing to have since my dad has recently retired. We're both committed to carrying on the tradition my father spoke about of exceptional orthodontic care and outstanding customer service right here in Homer Glen. We are also both continue to support the tradition of supporting Homer Glen and the surrounding communities through service and sponsorship that my dad spoke about. Tonight I asked the board to approve our parking lot expansion so that we may be in compliance with the village's request and so that we may provide more spaces for our patients and staff to park so they have no reason to look for parking in the Modelski parking lot, and we can continue to be respectful and supportive neighbors. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Evan Booth?
All right. Hello, my name is Dr. Evan Booth. I'm Dr. Barry Booth's youngest son and Dr. Ryan's younger brother. I joined Booth Orthodontics full-time in May of 2024, and I'm quite frankly thrilled to be part of the family business. I grew up around Booth Orthodontics, working landscaping and building storage cabinets in the basement as a kid, sterilizing dental instruments and assisting in the clinic in high school and college, and now after many years of schooling and training, officially joining as a practicing orthodontist alongside my brother. I want to reiterate our support and enjoyment in being part of the Homer Glen community, and also stress that our values as a family and as a small business align strongly with those of this community. I would greatly appreciate the board's approval on our parking lot expansion to better serve our patients and staff, and look forward to serving the Homer Glen community for decades to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Coy?
Hello, my name is John Coy. Live in Homer Glen. I'm over by Yangus Park on 137th and Wilcook Road. When this first started 50 years ago, Yangus Park was a water retention pond, then it was a floodplain, and now all of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, I drove out and all of a sudden here's about 8 dump truck loads put in there. And I got a picture, and I give all the youths that would have chaired there the picture. The front is Yangus Park. When they're just a regular water, goes halfway up that walkway. And with that, now with all of this here asphalt that's not even ground up or anything, with all the lumps and bumps, and then with Tratina Farm getting some soil, we don't know what's in that. You know, because one guy that was talking to the neighbor, and he says, yeah, he said, my dog and me were out there walking, and the dog went over and ate something off that asphalt. He said, and there was somebody just threw an old sandwich out. He said, now, I don't know if there's something in that soil or it was the sandwich, but the dog was sick then for a couple of days. I still haven't figured out who dumped that stuff there, but that I'd like to know. And if anybody had anything to say, you can say it now. And maybe I could tell the neighbors that. There's only 52 homes in my subdivision, so with that, we all have access to the park and the walking path. So.
Mr. Coy, Village Manager Joe Baber will address that in his report tonight.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Heidi Pasella.
Hi, my name is Heidi. I didn't prepare anything to say specifically besides I know how many issues are going on, and each and every single one of you up here has spent a lot of time investigating and talking to people and attending meetings and going through paperwork and reading emails, and I think everyone deserves a pat on the back because it's very hard work. And so with that said, I wanted to say something about the 143rd Street, and I thought of an idea. So if you're crunched with time and it's difficult to get to these issues, I know maybe you can create like a subcommittee, and I think it's in your ordinance, and you can actually assign a group of people to do some investigative work and research. I took a screenshot, hold on. So it would be like a group of people for advisory purposes, and they could collect information. Sometimes it could even be a non-resident member. So it's up to you, the village president, to do that. So it's just an idea I'm throwing out there. If there's a lot of things going on, maybe a subcommittee would help the community get some things resolved a little bit quicker and maybe keep people informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina Robinson.
Good evening. I was at the July 24th Village Board meeting, and the issue of Trantina Farm development was discussed, and I made comments at that time. And basically what happened was that one trustee voted to abstain from voting because, as I remember, he stated that he did not have the information available before the meeting to make a decision. So I hope that everyone agrees to a revote on this issue. The residents deserve to have fair elections, as well as open and honest disclosure as to how their village is run. Maybe this was an issue where the community should have been given more information and been involved in. Since the intent of the grant is now compromised by violating the wording of the agreement, will the taxpayers have to repay this money on the grant? For the people who moved out here for the open space know that about 95% of their open space farmland is owned by a real estate developer, and one day, soon enough, it will be developed. The existing 5 open space parcels were explored by volunteers years ago who wanted to keep them as open space land for the residents, maintaining the rural character of Homer Glen, and it was brought to a vote for the residents to decide, and it passed. So again, since one trustee was unable to vote because he did not have the proper information prior to the meeting, I'm asking that there be a revote on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy McCow. Makauka? No, you can come up now.
Good evening. Sandra Makauka on behalf of the Modelskis. Obviously, we've asserted a number of different legal challenges. All of that is in the record already. The most recent, I guess, objection that we asserted, which was communicated to the village manager earlier this week, was the fact that the village code, by its own strict terms, provides that the petition has to be ruled upon within, as far as the special use permits. That is actually, and the zoning ordinances are 120 days and 6 months, both of which dates have passed. As far as, kind of tabling this petition as of the last meeting, that was done without actually bringing it back to the table or a motion to bring it back to the table. But regardless, the Illinois law, and this is clear, that the board does not actually have jurisdiction to even entertain this petition at this point. It has been denied by virtue of the strict language of the code, which said if it's not ruled upon by the board, it is deemed to be denied. So we would request that the petition have to go back through the process that's prescribed by the municipal code and actually comply with that code before it can get back to this board to render a determination on the petition. That's all I have to really say.
Thank you. George Arnold?
George Arnold, appearing on behalf of Dr. Booth. I want to clear up a couple things that have been said that are just simply not true over the past couple times. One, it's been said that there's many variances being asked for this project. There's only 2 variances being asked as a result of this parking lot. Just 2. The other 5 are part of village policy, which is a good policy, that when somebody comes in and there's some existing nonconformities on the existing property, that the village staff asks that those be part of it. So those are the other 5. But for this particular project, there's only 2. So it's incorrect to say there's 9 or 11 or 7 or whatever has been said. The other thing is there's, and this has been said from the beginning, there's nothing odd about the way this property was acquired. There's nothing odd that a government body, 10 years ago would decide that it needed to acquire a piece of property for its use as a detention pond, and then 10 years later decide, what, part of it is not needed. And it was all done in the public. It was done by a resolution of the Will County Board under the guidance of the state's attorney, where they said, we do not need this anymore. We are going to sell it. And they sold it at a public auction, which everybody was free to bid at. Dr. Booth was a successful bidder. So I wanted to clear that up as well. It's also important to remember why we're here. We're here in 2018 and also in 2020, or about a year later. The village specifically sent Dr. Booth a letter saying, we want you to expand your parking lot. That's what he's here doing. Most importantly, we are not here asking you to vote against the Modelskis. We are here asking you to vote in favor of our plan. And we're asking you to do that because it's the right thing to do. Our plan has been recommended and approved by the Plan Commission. It is supported by village staff. Our engineering has been approved by the village engineer. It's also been approved, which is unique, but by the Will County engineer. There's no evidence that's been presented to the contrary. If you wanted to object to this, you had plenty of time to hire your own engineer and get up here and put your own engineer on to say why our engineering is wrong or that there will be flooding. That has not been done. Most importantly, the approval of this plan will not hurt the Modelskis or their business or their property, and there's been no evidence presented to show that it will. This plan will, however, solve a problem. It will double the parking. I think everybody here, regardless of how you feel about this, agrees that a parking problem has been identified. It will solve the parking problem
30 seconds.
That was identified 3 years ago by the village. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports and communication from President and other officers. Village Manager Joe Baber, you have Citizens Utility Board presentation.
Unfortunately, the gentleman from the Citizens Utility Board had a family matter he had to attend to, so he will not be attending this evening. He will reschedule for the August 28th Village Board meeting. That being said, to address Mr. Coy's concerns regarding Angus Park, These are actually grindings that from our road resurfacing projects that are ongoing in the community. These grindings will provide better grading and a fresh surface on the parking lot there. Large chunks will be removed, and this base will also provide if we decide to pave that lot in the future. So we're the ones who dump those grindings in the park. Additionally, I'd like to thank several groups that assisted with the Steve McMichael Hall of Fame induction and celebration event. Our EMA department, the Parks Department, Mr. Woods, DeWitt County Sheriff's Department, the Northwest Homer Fire Protection District, and Portageon for their donation of the restrooms for the event. I'd also like to thank our residents. They were fantastic, and they helped raise money for the ALS research. That's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Joe, would you mind giving an update on Bell Road?
I would defer to our village engineer, Brett Westcott.
Absolutely. The utility relocations out there are complete. We've moved back to workable calendar days for the general contractor. The controlling item is the storm sewer installation that was impacted by the utility conflict. They are working towards resuming work out there. We're hoping that they will be out there before the end of the month. I know that they're caught up on another project right now, and that specific crew, the storm sewer crew, is caught up on a separate project. Once they wrap up there, they'll mobilize on site, and the goal is to get into the next phase prior to the end of this year, and then a completion of the project will occur, I would say, towards the end, fall or winter of 2025.
Thank you. Village trustees, we'll start with Trustee McNaughton.
No, ma'am, thank you.
Trustee Mason.
Yes, Madam Mayor. We had our behavioral health and addiction recovery, mental health meeting last week. I know we're shooting for an open forum in October to give residents awareness. It was pretty successful last time. It may be audio taped and or videoed. We're working on that. We have 18 days until September. September is Suicide Prevention Month. I just want to raise awareness of the visibility at the local level for mental health and encourage others to start the conversation. Together we can reinforce the importance of having open and honest conversations with others in our community. Also, we've been getting, we had our Public Safety and Public Services Committee, and we've been getting a lot of complaints, Chickasaw Hills, Old Oak, speeding. We've gone through our equipment. I've talked to the department heads. I think we've, during our meeting with Public Safety and Services, discussed traffic issues around town and the studies and some of the data that we're receiving from the current traffic counter devices, and some of them are broken. It was determined that we need to upgrade our equipment, and we will be putting together a budget to request for the next year's fiscal budget for 4 speed radar trailer system messaging boards. They do several things. These would be shared between Public Works and EMA, and the cost would be split between the two departments. These speed trailers record speed data and volume of vehicles and provide full reports and display the driver's speed while giving warning messages to speeders. They can also be programmed with messages for events, emergencies, road closures, and more. Ron Cuss and Brent Woods are looking into grant opportunities to fund these trailers, which would run approximately about $15,000 each. But every year, every summer, every spring, we go through this process where everybody is coming in and complaining and worried about the safety of the areas, and stop signs are not always the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mason. Trustee Consolino?
No report.
Trustee Fialko?
Yes, thank you, President. With Homerfest, I just want to let everybody know at ANF, we did talk about restructuring that and how that would be handled. Of course, that's going to take an ordinance change, so that's still in the works, so I don't really have an update with that other than it's in the process of being worked on and coming to an agreement as to how that will be done. I'd also like to thank Kono's Farm for the donation. I believe we got the check today for $1,500.
Correct.
So for $1,500, they donated corn and had a corn boil. So I believe that was on our fireworks night, and then it carried over to one other night. But anyway, thank you to Konos Farm for that, their donation of the $1,500 towards Homerfest. That would be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Stylen?
Yes, thank you. Reporting for the Community Development Committee, we have a few events coming up. On Friday, August 23rd is a Food Truck Friday, along with a Tuck a Truck event. And there will be 8 food trucks, so please plan on coming out and enjoy some good food without having to cook a meal on a Friday night, and enjoy our beautiful park. Also, on Saturday, August 31st, we will be having our first parade around Heritage Circle here at the park. It will kick off at 10 o'clock a.m., so please plan on arriving early for a spot in one of the lots, either out here or along the side. There won't be parking along the ring road. And then also, after the parade, we have a really nice family fun day at the park planned. We'll have several food trucks. I know I'm planning on trying the one from Cousin's Maine Lobster. And we will also have magic show and our ever popular crosstown exotic creatures and reptiles will also have a show with their fascinating animals. And plan on playing some games. We'll have equipment that you can borrow to play pickleball, tennis, volleyball, bocce ball, and we will also have some old-fashioned games such as tug of war, 3-legged races, and a water balloon toss. And characters of Mario and Princess Peach will also be there to greet the kids. So it's really, we're really excited about this event. I think it's going to be a really fun day, and I hope you all join us. And one more thing about the parade, we're still accepting applications. So if you'd like to be part of the parade, please call our events department. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Madam Clerk? No report. Attorney Carroll?
I submitted the memo that I believe was circulated to the board late last week, so other than that, I have no report.
Attorney Pasquinelli?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Public safety officials? Okay, moving on to me. I have a lot to report tonight. First and foremost, I would like to apologize deeply for having to leave the last meeting. I had a medical emergency. I know there was a lot of people asking or stating that I had left the meeting because there was some hard votes that evening, which unfortunately is not true. I tried to stay, but these two made me go, so I'm doubly equipped tonight with attorneys in case something else shall go wrong. They will escort me out. Couple of things, since I did miss the last meeting, I wanted to touch base on some comments that were made last time and tonight. But before I get to that, Trustee Rose Reinders wanted to also apologize for not attending to the meeting. She had an emergency with her granddaughter, and she asked that you all keep her in your prayers. The Ability Awareness Committee raised $5,186 at Homerfest. It's just like Trustee Fialco stated, $1,500 was donated by Konos, $1,000 was donated by Rob Salerno, who owns the carnival, and then the rest was made by Dunk Tank and tips. So the committee greatly appreciates all the donations, and we'll be back next year to keep it going. We haven't decided what we're doing with the money, but we're going to have some fun things coming up. We did have a few microbursts and 100-mile-per-hour winds about a month ago. I really wanted to say thank you to Public Works, the Parks Department, village staff, everybody who came out, pitched in. We had residents calling nonstop saying, where can I help? How can I help? Who needs assistance where? It really showed that this community really works together and is there for each other. I'm very thankful that no one was hurt. I do want to comment on that, though. We have a branch pickup service for when something like that happens. I want to extend my comments are, when we have a free service like that, we've noticed that sometimes landscapers or some residents feel this is the perfect time to do yard cleanup and start cutting down their own trees and then take advantage of that service. It is used for emergency purposes only, so I ask that when there is a situation like that, that we really try just to use it for emergency purposes. I wanted to touch base on Trantina Farm. So obviously I was not here last meeting. There was a few comments about the vote. I want to be very clear what that vote was for. The vote was not to give the township permission to build a building. That vote was taken in 2021 by the previous board, who granted an intergovernmental agreement to allow the township to build an event center. The vote that took place at the last meeting was to agree upon a style of building, or what space can be put, or what event style building could be put there. It had nothing to do with whether they could or could not. I do agree that a lot of information was not given. I do agree with Trustee Reiner's comments in the last meeting that there wasn't a lot of public involvement, which I would have hoped for. I did have a lot of questions myself that evening, but I do not blame Trustee Mason from abstaining from his vote, because there was a lot of misinformation, not enough information, and a lot of confusion. So I ask that we give the board members grace on that, because that was a tough decision to make, and I can guarantee that nobody here on this board is looking to hurt anybody purposely with that vote. I also wanted to touch base on 143rd Street. I know that there was a lot of residents who came out last meeting to talk about 143rd. I want to read the exact lawsuit, because I keep hearing, why isn't the village on a lawsuit like the township? Again, the township is not listed on the lawsuit. The lawsuit reads, Judy Ogala, Steve Balich, Katie Dean Schlotman, Frankie Pretzel, Daniel Butler, Jim Richmond, Annette Parker, Vince Logan, Raquel Mitchell, and Julie Berkowitz in their official capacity as members of the Will County Board. First, the plaintiffs of Jennifer Patino Tarrant as County Executive, Will County. There's no mention of Homer Township. Homer Township is listed as an exhibit. The village would have also been an exhibit if we were to be asked, but we were never asked. So that is the final on that. They are not listed on the lawsuit, so we can put that one to bed. The comments were also made, why didn't the village buy 143rd or take 143rd? When that was brought up and discussed, I was the only elected official in that room when that took place. I don't even get to vote unless there's a tie. That would be something that would be discussed amongst the board. There was a great amount of money involved in that question. There were many discussions and meetings lined up, and we did attend a few, but once this lawsuit that I just read out loud came forth, all of those discussions were ended. So we were not allowed to discuss anything about taking over the road any further. I know at the last meeting, Hadley Road was brought up. I want to make it very clear once again, the township had no impact on the village taking over Hadley Road. That was started in April, and the residents in the township didn't get involved until August. So we, as a village, were already planning on taking over that road, just like I stated with 143rd Street. There's a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, a lot of things that have to happen before you make such a large decision that would impact the residents. Me personally, I would love to take over 143rd, but since this lawsuit, I haven't been able to have any communication with the county whatsoever. At the last board meeting, there were some residents that had disrespected this board by outbursts, by yelling things in the audience. I ask that we don't do that. Let's be as respectful as we can. We're trying to be a professional up here and get some things done. So I ask that we don't have that kind of outburst anymore. On a few positive notes, I saw that Lou Zemke and Commander Kerfin were here. The village has started welcome bags for new residents in town. So if there's a business or the American Legion or whoever would like to add something to the welcome bag, Gia is kind of taking charge on that, so I greatly appreciate that. There's some fun little trinkets in there to promote our village, let people know what's going on in town, and if there's like a business that has coupons or just want to welcome a new resident to the area, by all means, feel free to contact Gia and she'll get you in the right direction. Couple other things I had here. I'm so sorry, there's a lot. Let me see what else. Mr. Walters, I want to thank you for always coming to the board meeting and giving prayer. I think right now we do need some more prayer in our lives. With everything that's going on in the world today, I think it's important that we always remember prayer as well. I think that is it for now. Oh, and I wanted to thank Mike Bonomo for his nice comments. Oh, one other thing. There was a comment made at the last board meeting about there was hopes that it was an oversight, that the village did not properly thank the township for putting on a senior/veterans event. That is because none of us were aware that the township was hosting or putting on or entertaining a senior event. We were aware of the veterans event, which we did pay for bagpipes, the band, a lot of things for that event, but no one on this board was aware of the senior event. So just for clarification. In new business, we'll do that. Okay, so that does conclude my report. We're going to move on to consent agenda. Consent agenda 1, consider for approval the accounts payable for period of July 26, 2024 through August 15, 2024 in the amount of $349,845.34. 2, consider for approval resolution number 24-012 approving the intergovernmental agreement between the County of Will and the Village of Homer Glen providing an animal control services in Homer Glen, Will County, Illinois. 3, consider for approval resolution number 24 approval resolution number 24-15 authorizing an execution of agreement with HR Green to undertake an engineering and design process for drainage improvements for Pine Hill Estates subdivision. 4, consider for approval a motion to allow Facilities Department to proceed with obtaining quotes to install a new electronic gate opener on the south gate of Public Works Building. 5, consider for approval the purchase of a Ford F-550 with a plow from Curry Ford in the amount of $112,203. And 6, consider for approval the updated quote for 2 international plow trucks in the total amount of $502,449.44 from Rush Truck Henderson Equipment, which includes the previous approved amount of $452,707.58 from 2002, and now includes the additional sum of $49,741.86 to previously approved amount. Is there a motion?
So moved. I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mason, is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Stylen. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino. Aye. Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Motion carries. Legislation and action items. Number 1, consider for approval the mayor's appointment of Dr. Joel Akawi to Ability Awareness Committee. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee McNaughton.
I'll second.
Trustee Mason, do you have any comments? Trustee
No,
McNaughton?
ma'am.
Trustee Mason?
I have complete confidence in you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 2, consider for approval an ordinance granting 1, a special use permit for an indoor religious use, and 2, a site plan for certain real property located in the R4 Single Family Residence District at 13030 West 143rd Street, Homer Glen, Illinois, HG 2414SP. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Fialko, Trustee Consolino. Trustee Fialko, do you have any comments?
I just want to point out that the Planning Commission did their work, and they did vote 5-0 to recommend.
Thank
That'd be
you.
it for me.
Trustee Consolino?
No comment.
Is there any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino. Aye. Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, consider for approval a motion to pull from the table HG 2407B, and if approved, consider for approval an ordinance granting a variance to reduce the required side yard setback for a shed under 750 square feet from 10 to 1.89 feet for certain real property located in the R2A Single Family Residential District at 14040 South Cedar Road, Homer Glen, Illinois, HG 2407-V. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee
to pull
Mason,
from the
is there a
table.
second?
I'll second.
Trustee McNaughton, Trustee Mason?
No, ma'am, I've read it. The Plan Commission voted 4-2. At this point, I think we should move forward.
Trustee McNaughton?
Agreed. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Trustee Fialko?
Yes, this is, actually, the motion was to take it, pull it from the table, right? And so with this said, this is that structure that was built on the property without a permit, and we talked about it in detail and how it affects the village. And therefore, I just want to call that out, that this was discussed before, and there's a lot going on here. And this, I believe Sue even mentioned, this is a contractor that did this, so they're well-versed on what took place there. That would be my comment. Thank you.
Trustee Stylen?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I oppose this, that I do believe that, you know, this person started to build a garage-sized shed without a permit, and I think it sets a dangerous precedence. And and since it doesn't really meet code and it would require this variance, it will, I believe it will affect the property values of the neighbors in the future. And so I'm opposed.
Does the board wish to entertain approving a motion to pull it from the table first?
That's what I did.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay.
Okay, that's okay. So, was there any more discussion?
May I ask a question quickly? If through the attorney, is he saying that it's a two-step motion, or is it just
Yeah.
one motion for the whole thing?
No.
Yes.
It is a two-step process, and counsel in the back had mentioned something about that for one of the other items on the agenda. When you table something as opposed to continue it to a date certain, then you need a motion to pull it from the table. Then you, if that passes, you consider the underlying motion.
So for record, it should be written next time, two separately.
Or
Okay.
A and B. A and B.
A and B.
Yeah.
So Trustee Mason, you made the motion. Trustee McNaughton, you're changing your motion to pull it from the table first.
That's the motion I made.
Okay.
Correct.
Does anybody have any discussion on pulling it from the table first? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on that?
Trustee Mason?
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton?
Aye.
Trustee Consolino? Trustee Fialco?
Aye.
Trustee Stylen?
Aye.
Motion carries. So the next motion, which I would consider 3B, consider for approval an ordinance granting a variance to reduce the required side yard setback for a shed under 750 square feet from 10 to 0.89 feet for certain real property located in the R2A Single Family Residential District at 14040 South Cedar Road, Homer, Glen, Illinois. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mason?
I'll second.
Trustee Stylen, okay. Trustee Stylen, or Trustee Mason, you already made your comments?
Yeah, they voted, the Plan Commission voted 4-2 to recommend it. I don't agree with everything that the resident did or the contractor, but again, moving forward.
Trustee Stylen?
Yeah, I pretty much stated it. I don't know if, we tabled it because the petitioner wasn't here. So does the petitioner want to say anything?
Well, I guess that you direct your questions to me, and we'll pull the petitioner up after.
All right.
I want to get through comment first. Did you have any more comments?
No.
Trustee McNaughton?
No, outside, I think it may have potentially been the contractor that didn't pull the license initially, not the homeowner.
Trustee Fialco?
Yeah, it just, I mean, for the Planning Commission, it was not unanimous.
No.
So there was controversial things that came up there too. So that's all I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Trustee Consolino?
I'm in agreement with Trustee Stylen on this. I wasn't happy with how the shed was initially put in, and the fact that they're asking for from 10 square feet to 1 foot 8 inches, I think is a lot. So no, I do agree with Trustee Fialco. Planning Commission didn't completely agree on this, so that's my opinion.
Is the petitioner here? Would you mind stepping up to the podium, please?
Hello.
Hi. Did you want to make any statement or any comments to the trustees as they had pointed out?
What can I say? This happened, you know. I don't know why you guys need the permit for the shed, because it's not the garage like Mr. Guy just said. It's only the shed. And I asked some of the friends who live over here, they said for the shed they don't need it, so that's why I not get it, okay? Another thing is there was the fence, my neighborhood fence, they move it too much. And I take 8 feet off the, fence, but I didn't know it's moving too much. You see in the plan of survey, so that was another problem. That's why now it's only 20 inches.
Thank you. Trustee Mason, you made the motion. Do you have any?
Yeah, I just worry about your neighbor. He states that he's worried about his septic field and the mechanicals of that. I'm not sure what to say about that because the property drains the septic system between the two houses. And as Trustee Consolino points out, you took it from 10 feet down to 1 foot, 8 inches.
But which neighborhood, with the right side or left side?
Well, I'm not sure, I don't live there. So I know that the setback is normally 10 feet, and it's now reduced to 1.8, and the septic field is in between the houses, and your neighbor's worried about his own drainage.
Yeah, but the septic is under the ground, so what is
That's true.
point with the, with the garage? They go under the ground all the way down, like 100 feet, you know what I mean?
And your permit was for a shed, right?
Yes.
And it's a garage?
No,
You just
because I
said
have no
garage.
driveway, no, just door is 6 feet, so it's only the shed, it's no garage. It's oversized, I agree, but it's not the garage.
Trustee Stylen?
Yeah, I don't think I really have much more to say other than, at some point, would you be putting electric in that too?
Yes.
Yeah,
I need
which would
some-
require a permit as well.
Yeah, so then I'm gonna get the permit for the electrical, I need it, because it's pretty big shed, so I need it.
Okay. And you do construction work?
Yes.
What kind?
The framing, rough framing, porches, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Lot of-
So I think you should be familiar with the process of getting a permit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion?
Not from me. Thank you.
Brett, Mr. Westcott, do you have any comments?
Regarding specifically drainage or anything like that?
Anything you'd like to add?
I think that there's an issue with not pulling permits for structures of this size. I think that there's a process that you need to go through here at the village, right? Coming to us and discussing these things to talk about our setbacks. We have our village code for a reason, right? It lays out those rules on what we need to follow. And I think that this sets a dangerous precedent for those things. If you approve variances like this, who knows? You may open the floodgates to more people building large structures without permits and causing larger issues in the village.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason?
No.
Trustee Stylen?
No.
Trustee Fialko?
No.
Trustee Consolino?
No. Did you say no?
Okay, I didn't hear you, sorry. Trustee McNaughton?
I'm sorry, no.
Motion fails.
All right.
Mr. Westcott, would you reach out to the resident to let him know the next steps or what has to happen from there? Or Mr. Baber, one or the other?
Yes, we will.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 4. A and B, right. There was one that was put at the dais that I was supposed to read conditions on. I don't see it. Did anybody get that?
Which one is it?
Oh, I found it. It's 9. Never mind. Number 4, consider for approval a motion to pull from the table HG 2306 SMPV. Is there a motion to pull from the table?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mason, is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee McNaughton. Any discussion? Trustee Mason?
No, ma'am.
Trustee McNaughton?
No, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
On the table?
Oh, on the table, no.
I mean, pulling from the table? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason?
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton?
Aye.
Trustee Stylen?
Aye.
Trustee Fialko?
Aye.
Trustee Consolino?
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a for B, is there a motion for consider for approval an ordinance granting 1, a map amendment from R5 Single Family Residential to C1 Neighborhood Commercial, 2, a site improvement plan for a parking lot expansion with related variances, 3, a variance to reduce the minimum required parking stall depth from 19 feet to 18 feet, and 4, a variance to increase the maximum allowable lot coverage impervious from 65% to 77%, and an additional variances are granted for existing legal non-conforming conditions of the property commonly known as 12635 West 143rd Street, Homer, Glen, Illinois, and for the property legally described in Exhibit A in the ordinance case number HG 2306 SMPV. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Trustee Consolino, is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Mason? Trustee Consolino?
Okay. You know, this is a very difficult
Is your
position to-
microphone on?
Yeah.
Oh, seems low.
Sorry, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think it's working this time. No, this is a very difficult position to be in, and this has been going back and forth, I don't know how many months now at this point. You know, I want to say that this board and our village appreciates both businesses. Both are outstanding pillars in our community. Both contribute immensely to our community. What was that? I'm sorry. Okay.
Your question, I have the wrong thing in my hand.
I want Mr. Booth's attorney to know, I agree that there's the need for more parking, and I've stated this on the board. I agree that our village staff and the planning commission supported the variances. But at the end of the day, there's still nonconformities being requested on previous nonconformities. So I'm not changing my stance on that. I also don't agree with how this item was tabled on the July 24th meeting. I let this board know that. I let our attorneys know that, because I didn't appreciate how Mr. Booth's attorney came up to our podium and demanded that we table because he wanted the mayor to be present for a vote. And some of my board members caved and they tabled it. When you go through IML and you go through Robert's Rules of Order, it's not really a good reason to table. It also doesn't look right. You know, I don't know why that was done. I don't know why our board agreed. I wish we would have voted on it then. I don't see what difference the mayor being here is going to make, or what somebody possibly knows what kind of difference it's going to make. So that leaves me very, very uncomfortable. I did my homework a little bit. You know, the question is not why, like, not that the property was taken, okay? And we discussed this in great length. I did at the last board meeting. You know, we can't look at that, yes, Will County took it under eminent domain. That does not factor into this. What my question has been religiously for the past how many months was, why did they take it? Why did they condemn it? You know, and I'm being told, well, they don't always include that kind of paperwork. I just wanted to see that paperwork, okay? It's common sense. Why can't I see why the property got condemned and now all of a sudden it's okay? You know, when you look at what, I think it's SB 3086, eminent domain in Illinois requires the government proves that an area is blighted before condemnation. You know, and when you look up what blighted means, it means that something is impairing or it destroys, okay? So I had to look that up, I didn't know. You know, when I spoke to Will County Department of Transportation, I spoke to one of the engineers, I asked, what is this paperwork that I'm looking for that nobody can give to me, because I've got paperwork up the wazoo from like dating back to 2001 on that property, right? That was that 1,000-page packet we had 2 weeks ago. And nobody can give it to me. And I've been asking for it for months. My staff can't produce it. Will County can't produce it. FOIAs can't produce it. But it does exist, because what I was explained to by the engineers was there's an entire process when you condemn a property and you take it for eminent domain. It includes all of this paperwork. And the piece of paperwork that I'm looking for is called the order vesting title. I don't know why this can't be presented to me. I don't know why it can't be presented to this board or to my staff. But until that point, I have no confidence in these variances where we're going with, you know, nonconformities on top of nonconformities. And I tried to say it best in what I read in the Plan Commission minutes. You know, maybe it's time that you've outgrown that property. And that happens. And then the way it was, I think the metaphor that was used was like a family sometimes outgrows their home. You know, it's not that I don't want to give you more parking. I don't think anybody here wants to hurt your business. Your business has thrived in this community. It's benefited all of us. It's benefited this community, and we're very grateful for that. But I have to look at all the factors. You know, my opinions are different than everybody else on this board. So everybody has a different opinion, and they're entitled to do that. I'm doing what I consider to be my due diligence, and I'm sorry that this paperwork, for whatever reason, cannot be provided, but it should exist. I'm sure it did at one point. I don't know what happened to it. But I'm still very uncomfortable, and I want this publicly known in case this comes back to bite us somehow legally. I'm not comfortable with anybody's attorney demanding that we table something so that the mayor can be in attendance to vote, and I want that on the record. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Consolino. I have provided the information you were asking. It's in your packet. It's right here that you're saying was not provided. It's actually,
May I say something?
Yes.
Madam Mayor? It's a very voluminous packet. I've been away. I'm sorry. I apologize to the board. I've been on vacation for almost 2 weeks, and I have just been getting back to catching up on emails and everything. I know this is a very voluminous packet. There is a copy of the order, and I apologize to Trustee Consolino. I would have spoken to her earlier. I was not here earlier today. I had to pick something back up at my house, and I came back a little bit tardy. But, ma'am, there is the order that's in the packet. I have it here, and this is an order that was the order that was issued part of the eminent domain action, the order directing compensation to the individual folks in exchange for the deed.
The compensation is in there, but not... I'm sorry, compensation is written on there, but there's not the reason for why the property got condemned.
Well, this is the actual order, though.
I know, but that's regarding that, the offer that they have to give by law, because I remember all of that.
And I apologize. I thought you had mentioned that you're looking for an order vesting title, and this, in my view, it was my understanding this would satisfy what you were looking for. The order vesting title, this is an order that...
It's the purpose of why it was condemned. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, those are mine. Both of those are mine. All right, Trustee Mason, Trustee Consolino, were you done?
Yes.
That one's mine as well. Trustee Mason?
Yes, as council states, it's very voluminous. We've been over this many times. I think this actually will benefit both businesses. They may have outgrown, but I think they've outgrown the parking. I thought I read in there, and I'm not sure if it was this one, I believe it was, that the reason it was condemned was they thought they were going to need overflow for water at some point. And when they thought they were going to need that, they purchased the property under eminent domain. The Moldowskis accepted it. And then later on, 10 years later, they looked at it and found that they had surplus land that they didn't need because they didn't need to use it because there were other ponds that were closer to 143rd that they could utilize. And so they forgoed it and put it back up to auction, which nobody, as far as I remember, showed for, but the Booths went ahead and bid on it and secured that property. There are only 2 variances that I noticed in here, which is minuscule in order to make both parties happy. It's been approved by the village, it's been approved by the village and county engineering and the plan commission, so I'm ready to vote.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments? Trustee Steilen?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I feel like it needs the wisdom of Solomon for this one because it's been really hard. And every time it got tabled or put off, I was like a little bit relieved because I would have more time to think about it. And today it still is complicated because I like both businesses. I've never used Booth, but I have used Modell. And it's really hard, but when I thought about the building and the parking lot, it didn't have adequate parking to begin with. So if the Booths were to sell that property to somebody else, who are they going to sell it to that's going to be able to have adequate parking? So the parking needs to be expanded, I think, regardless. And that is the only reason probably why I'm going to vote for it, because there's so many other things that I don't like about it.
Is there any further discussion?
I have
Trustee Field. I know, but I'm asking, is there any further discussion?
Okay, yes.
And I have one thing.
I'd like us to actually, there was the comment made from the podium about the 120 days. If you would, I'd like to have legal kind of go through that. And I know we were briefed a little bit this afternoon through an email, but I still, for the public, would like the public to have an answer for that if they could. We're taking something that's non-conforming and making it more non-conforming. We've had 3 complaints from the neighbors, which we have to take the neighbors into consideration and what's going on over there. The Booths, both businesses are great businesses. I understand there's been a little bit of a problem trying to work things out, but I really think in the long run, without doing this, something could be worked out between both parties. adding more parking. And the other thing is with that piece of property that was sold back to the Boots, they actually came up with a parcel number for that, separate from the parcel number that it actually was. So they subdivided a parcel number into a subparcel number to create that. Not that that should make too much of a difference, but I believe sometimes, and I've said it before, I think Trustee Castellino said it, we had a house that we grew out of and we had to move, and that's what we did. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that, you know, based on your neighbors' complaints, 3 of them, all within a short period of time, and the Planning Commission did not vote on this unanimously. It wasn't unanimous that there was complete agreement on it. So we have to take everybody's into consideration here. The neighbors, the Booths, the Models, and I just think maybe between the businesses themselves, they could come up for a more amicable agreement besides cutting into that piece of property in the back. So that would be my input. Thank you.
So my comments on it are, there are a few statements made today, and when we have these meetings, I like facts. I like for people to state truths, and there seems to be some confusion as to being promised for a full board. I've never heard that comment ever. I mean, I think I would have been told that at some point. I do know that I requested for a special meeting for this agenda item specifically because we did not have quorum for a certain meeting, which we didn't have quorum for the July, I think it was July 10th meeting, we weren't going to have quorum for. So I asked for a special meeting for this to be heard so all of the board could be present because we didn't have, I'm sorry, we wouldn't have quorum for the, I'm sorry, we had quorum for the next meeting. Again, I had to have an emergency exit. Asking to table again, I don't think the outcome would have been any different because after speaking to Trustee Reinders and hearing the board members on my right, it also seems to me that they are leaning the same way. So regardless if the vote would have taken place last time or this time, it would have turned out to be the same. So with that being said, I asked Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
We requested.
I asked Madam Clerk to please call, oh, you want
Legal's
to have the
opinion
attorney?
on the 120.
Trustee Consolino.
Wait, they're right. I should have the attorney explain that because that was one of the things I wanted you to explain.
Sure. I disagree, our entire firm disagrees with Attorney McCalca on the 120 days. That's for special uses. The agenda item here doesn't have a special use. It has map amendments and has variances. So the 120 days does not apply. As for the jurisdictional issue that she argued also, we disagree as well on that. The code says if the board takes no action, that after 6 months, the application can be deemed denied. This board and the village as a whole are taking quite a bit of action on this case. I believe the intent of that ordinance, the way we read it, is that it was in the event the village sat on an application and did nothing, the applicant could deem it a denial after 6 months and then take action if they had a cause of action against the village. But the fact that the village has continued this from time to time, there clearly has been action, so it's our opinion that it does not apply either.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Consolino.
No.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Fialko.
No.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to number 5, consider for approval a motion to pull from the table the issue of the video gaming license for Nikki's Bar and Gaming. Is there a motion to pull it from the table?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Mason, is there a second?
I'll second.
Trustee McNaughton. Is there any discussion on pulling from the table? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Is there a motion, consider request for the, is there a motion to reverse the denial of the video gaming license for Nikki's Bar and Gaming?
I'll make that motion also.
Trustee Mason?
I'll second.
Trustee McNaughton? Trustee Mason?
And I've had conversation on this, and I've actually talked to Mr. Parente. I've been to his facility early on when he was seeking his liquor license. You know, I did feel that there was a time when he wasn't conforming, But as far as I know, and until somebody could show me differently, he is conforming, he's up to speed, he's in the ordinance. And if we're going to give it to a breakfast facility, I would definitely be giving it to a restaurant bar.
Thank you. Trustee McNaughton?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that as well. I know Mr. Parenti has been here numerous times over the last year. I think initially it was because when he applied, he was waiting on his pending gaming license from the state, which I believe he has obtained as of this point. So I'm happy to move forwards. Thank you.
Trustee Consolino?
Yes, I'd like, Mayor, could you please ask the attorneys what can be read from the findings of the investigation, since it was brought up publicly on the dais where Mr. Carroll stood at the podium and stopped us from voting on this and requested that we table this? Because it's pretty unprecedented. And also, what we were told that it was being investigated for was that it was in, what was it, discrepancies with the original liquor license? That's what you stated to us in the board meeting on the podium. Yes, it's on video. And then what you submitted to us, the 3 pages, was not. Can I state what it was for?
Is that the end of your comments? Because I'm going to have him touch base on all that as well when you're done.
Well, and then I would also like Mr. Parenti to stand up.
Trustee Fialco?
With this, just so I'm on the same page with everybody, the way I understand it, Mr. Parenti would have fell under the previous agreement because he should have been grandfathered. Now, I don't know, I only heard rumors between the office thing, between Joe Baber and yourself, that you denied the gaming license. I don't know if that's factual. Somewhere along the line, the gaming license was suspended, and it was said that they need to wait a year. Now, I don't like the way this was all put together in the beginning. I think everybody knows that. We talked about this, and when it came to the liquor license, then we changed the ordinance, and then we did it it was done the right way. That's all, and just so you know, that's all I was worried about, was changing the ordinance first, then giving you the liquor license, not the way it was done originally. Because, so moving on, I believe that he fell under the grandfather clause, now that we've got this far, that I don't see how we were able to deny him the gaming license based on him being grandfathered in and the ordinance that we now have. It seems like we're using the ordinance we have now after we finish the gaming license compared to what he would have been grandfathered in under. Now, I haven't heard from Joe Baber. I know he went out there, some things were checked on. I know there was a time period that it was said that he did not serve food, that he should have been serving food, but I still don't, I'd like to hear that all those requirements have been met now, just for my own satisfaction and for this board to have that information. But I think if some of those questions could be answered, it would surely help me in my decision on this matter.
Sure. Trustee Stylen?
Yes. So this is to approve a request for reversing the denial. And I believe it was denied because the menu that was promised us was not what was delivered, and the menu had changed. And which was interesting because I went there on May 13th, the same day, I guess, you denied it, and I didn't realize that. I went with a friend to check out the menu because I thought I've never eaten there, and I was looking forward to something different. And I was totally surprised and disappointed because it was it was different than the menu that's on the screen. All it was fried food, and I can't remember some things where else were not available. And so part of having a gaming license is having a restaurant that provides so much income from food, from what I believe. And so I don't think he's demonstrating that. So I'm not for reversing the denial.
Okay, so I'm going to take a stab at this. Hello, Mr. Parenti. So just to clarify some things, the applicant applied for the liquor license on August 9th, 2023. Applied for his gaming on August 22nd of 23. Mr. Parenti waited from the state to get his approval until April 25th of 24. When it was presented to me, I had asked Mr. Baber to go make sure that he was in compliance with all of the things that we were promised. Upon Joe's inspection, we found out he was not. So to me, I feel if you cannot stay in compliance with what the promises were that were made and discussed in the June 6th, 2023 meeting minutes, which I have right here, I don't feel that a gaming license should be granted. In fact, I was consulting with the attorneys about the liquor license in itself. I don't deny anything by myself. I sign and execute documents when something is denied. It was discussed. I didn't feel that a gaming license at that time was warranted. To answer Trustee Fialko's question as to the grandfather, non-grandfather, at this point, he still falls under the grandfather because when it was denied, he's asking for this board to reverse the denial. He's not coming to the board to do a new application process, because if he did, he would have to wait until, I believe it was 1 year, if he fell under the new, 1 year from the date of his opening, which I believe was it September 13th maybe, or in September.
It was like September.
So if he was the new ordinance, he wouldn't even be standing in front of us today. But since he's falling under the old ordinance, grandfather, as we loosely use that as, he's asking for you guys to reverse the denial. From what I understand, the original menu, which I have here, we asked, which you guys all got in your previous packets, he changed to a more upscale menu, which is what we discussed in the minutes, or in the meeting, which is recorded in the minutes. Then I also went there myself and seen menu 3, which does not have half of what was on the menu provided. Now we're being presented today with another menu, which is actually less than the original menu, which is less than what we desired, even more so from his original menu. I do believe that he did do some upgrades, which you guys were provided in the packet last meeting, with some, more upscale, designed the floor, did some painting, made it look a lot nicer. We did ask for white tablecloths. Tablecloths are not the end of the world to me, are not going to approve or deny a gaming license, in my opinion. I think it looks better. I think that the menu still needs some work. But again, that is up to you guys today. So the motion on the table is to reverse the denial as it sits. And Mr. Carroll, sorry.
I'm sorry.
You go, Mr. Yeah, you want to turn your microphone on them?
Just from a standard standpoint, you're not taking any deference, meaning you're not stuck with this board over here is not stuck with the findings from previous findings. What we call in law, you have a complete de novo review, meaning that the applicant over here is presenting his case to you, his basis for why he wants to have this gaming license. You're not required to utilize any of the findings in the past. It's just as if it came to this board initially. So when we look at in the big picture of things, under the new gaming ordinance, everything would go before this board for deliberation and termination if they're going to get a gaming license. Under the old ordinance provision, even though the village manager could deny it, it still would come to here to take final action on it in the event that the applicant, and which applicant would just say, no, I don't even want a gaming license. No, that old scheme had in place final action being taken by this board, because it's reasonable that just about any applicant that ever would be faced with a denial from the village manager would, more probably than not, more likely than not, come before you all, de novo review for deliberation. And that's what you're here for. So the standards from the old gaming code, and Michael and I had pulled them up. I have them here. It just talks about the village manager shall have the right to deny a terminal operator license to an applicant in the absence of reasonable proof necessary to evidence the applicant's ability to comply with or past compliance with the provisions of this article or any other ordinance of the village. And it goes on, the applicant may request a review by the village board of trustees, which is what you're all doing right now, of the denial by the village manager to issue the license. And that's it.
So, thank you. Mr. Carroll, I believe Trustee Consolino had asked a question about your investigation and your findings.
Sure.
Would you mind addressing that?
Sure. And first of all, just Trustee Consolino, so you understand, I saw your email about what you alleged I said in the last meeting, so I went back just tonight and looked at the video, and what I wrote down exactly what I said, which was that I had learned of, or we had learned of, quote, possible irregularities in the application process last spring for this applicant and this particular license. And that this particular license was the video gaming license that was on the agenda on July 24th. So I never said anything about last year. I never said anything about liquor license in my presentation to the board on July 24th. I will say, as I did on July 24th, that what was brought to our attention potentially could have been defamatory to Mr. Parenti, which is why I was very vague in what I had heard before I spoke to the board and just urged that you to consider tabling this matter. And likewise, I'm not going to get into specifics about what was alleged. All I will say is that my investigation revealed no sufficient proof of any irregularities in the licensing process. What was brought to our attention did not bear fruit. Mr. Parenti was kind enough through his attorney to set up an interview with me. I interviewed him. I interviewed Mr. Baber. I interviewed the mayor. And I interviewed the deputy clerk. And those were all the people that the information that was brought to my attention were involved in the process. There were a couple of allegations. I know Trustee Steinle, you had asked about why I didn't interview any of the trustees. We discussed that, but there was no evidence at that point in time to suggest there was any improper communication. None was even alleged with any of the trustees, so that's why my investigation stopped at the people that I did interview. But ultimately, I found no substantial evidence of any improprieties that we were concerned might have existed, and I don't want to go any further than that because I don't want to harm a business member's reputation, because like I said, it did not bear fruit. It did not pan out that what we were told might have.
Mr. Carroll, can you clarify for the board who exactly assigned and authorized you?
The mayor and village manager.
Because in your letter to us, it says, at the village board meeting of July 24th, I was assigned the task by the village board to investigate. That's not true.
That is not true. When I came here, what I said from the podium was I urge you to table this matter and allow us to conduct an investigation. But then when I went back and looked at the actual motion that I believe Trustee Steinle made, it was just to table. It might have been Trustee Reinders, I forget, the interim chair at the time. But so when I went back and looked at the minutes and I looked at the video, the actual motion was to table. So there, even though I had said, I asked you to table and authorize us to do an investigation, that's where that phrase came from in my memo. When I actually went back today to look at the video to see what I said, I found that the actual motion was just a table. So I had already been tasked with the investigation by the mayor and the village manager earlier that day.
Madam, well, I would like that corrected for the record.
Sure.
And rewrite that letter, please.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
I'm going to call point of order right now. We went through the board once already.
I wasn't finished.
You were, because I actually went to Fialco, then Trustee Steinle, and then myself, and asked the attorney to speak. I'm going to go back around again one last time. Trustee Mason, you made the motion? Oh, I did. Yeah, he said he didn't have any comments. Okay. Trustee Mason, do you have any additional comments?
I would like to hear from Mr. Parenti if we...
We'll get to him.
Okay.
Trustee Mason, do you have any?
Again, if everything is apples to apples and he's following the ordinances and he's within his rights, then I don't see how we can deny him. If we're going to give it to a breakfast facility, how are we not going to give it to somebody named Nikki's Barn Gaming?
Trustee McNaughton?
No, thank you.
Trustee Consolino?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Parenti a couple questions. Do I do that through you, Mayor, or?
You would do it through me, but we'll go through and then ask questions.
Okay, I would just like to ask 2 questions of Mr. Parenti.
Okay. What's your questions?
Could you ask Mr. Parenti if he was interviewed by Attorney Carroll for the investigation?
And the second question?
Second one, I want to know if Mr. Parenti feels that a thorough investigation was done.
Okay.
That's it.
Trustee Fialco?
What I'd like to hear is from Joe Baber, where he's at on this at the moment, and with everything being up to date now, and things have changed. You said the menus may be less, but the way I understood it, that he is shored up as far as the expectations that we have. But because Joe would be the one that originally denied it, right? That's what we're saying. I'd like to hear what Joe's input on this would be up to today, and what his recommendation would be, since he was the one who originally was handling this. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Steinle?
The only thing I would add is, so this menu that you have on the screen right now, that's what his current menu will be? Okay.
Correct.
Because I know that he wasn't supposed to have frozen pizza. And that's what was on the menu the day that I was there. So I'm just going to say I need to see some evidence of complying.
Okay. And my last comments would be, as we stated in the June 6th meeting, I'm not opposed to Mr. Parenti having a gaming license. What I'd like to see is, I don't want to see any more gaming bars. I'd like to see more established restaurants that can have gaming. I just feel like, as we all stated in the very first meeting, we're not a gaming parlor town. If we're going to give out gaming licenses, I think it needs to go to applicants that are putting the business, as in restaurant, establishment, food, services first, and not gaming. So, Mr. Parenti, 2 questions for you. Did you feel that a thorough investigation was done?
If conclusion was there wasn't anything there, I guess it was, because there wasn't.
And then were you actually interviewed by Mr. Carroll?
I was. In fact, it was recorded at my request.
Thank you. Mr. Baber, where are you at with this? What are your thoughts? How do you feel? Where were you when, no, I feel like I'm asking, like, where were you on 9/11? Where were you?
I do remember.
That was a bad comparison. I meant, like, where were you on that day? Okay, when the denial process took place, you went in and took photos, correct? And what did you find?
I felt that there was some deficiencies at that time with the menu and the equipment.
In the equipment. And did you convey that to the trustees?
Yes.
Let Mr. Baber answer.
I may or may have not, I don't recall.
Okay. Okay, because I was well aware of it. I know that you had met with Mr. Trustee Mason. I don't know about Trustee Stylen, but I did talk to them, and I also talked to Trustee Reinders.
My question was, well, how does he feel up to date today?
I'm getting there.
I didn't see it.
I've got the word current right here. And how do you feel about it today?
Today, when I did my inspection on June 12th and talking to Mr. Parenti at that time, he did make considerable investments in the decor of the establishment. He did put the menu back to pretty close to what the original menu looked like, and he did invest in additional equipment for the preparation of food.
So since he falls still under the old ordinance and you have the right to approve or deny, this board is voting on reversing the denial. At this time, would you give him a license?
I feel he met the original requirements of when he was approved.
Even with the food menu?
Even with the food menu, yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason?
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton?
Aye.
Trustee Consolino?
Abstain.
Trustee Fialko?
Aye.
Trustee Stylen?
No.
Motion carries. Oh, yeah, wait, is that majority? Yeah. Motion carries. So it's reversed. So the denial is now reversed. So then you would talk to Mr. Baber about getting your gaming license.
I thought there were questions, because there were comments and questions that I wanted to address to the board.
You should try to sell what's already sold.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay, moving on to, what number was that, 5? Moving on to number 6, consider for approval the Village of Homer Glen Emergency Operations Plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Trustee Stylen or McNaughton?
Close.
Okay. Mr. Cuss, do you have a presentation to present to us today?
I do, or I have a summary of the presentation.
A summary.
Take your time.
So our emergency operations plan is a guide that gives the village, Public Works Engineering Building Department, our fire districts, it's a guide should something happen where we have to really enact stuff we don't really want to talk about. The stakeholders that are particular to our plan is the village, the sheriff's department is our law enforcement agency, and then we have 4 or 5 fire districts. It's Homer, Northwest Homer, Orland, Mokina, and New Lenox. So ultimately, if it gets approved today, it's 12 signatures before everybody gets the final copy. And then what is it? It's a guide for when the incident or disaster would happen, but it's also an opportunity for, there's one example I could say for IT with one of the portions of the plan about how to prepare for redundancy and how to prepare for different options like that. We have preparedness, the plan, purchasing equipment, maintaining our equipment, training. I've been able to attend a good amount of training this year, which I brought back to the village, and I think it's helped on a lot of things. The base plan is standard with a lot of information on how your references for like the Stafford Act and a lot of the details like that. There's other support annexes and functional annexes that go beyond that. We have 18 total annexes that were in the plan, 12 original, and we added 6 this year for the biannual update to get approved by the county and the state. Appendices are quick reference guides in the back of some of the annexes, so it's not all cluttered in the back, just to try to keep them organized like that. The functional annexes get us into structure and purpose. Support annexes get us into guidance and a lot of the functional processes on how we can do what we need to do. So I mentioned these were the 12 previous annexes that were in the last copy of the plan for those who were here. The annexes that we had to add this year was a transportation annex, search and rescue, alternative housing, which was due to COVID, hazmat, continuity of government, and then animal control services. So one of the examples we were talking about for redundancy is we're trying to come up with different options just to make sure Village Hall is running. There was an incident a couple weeks or a month ago where Comcast, somebody hit a fiber optic along Gallagher, and we were able to kind of use some of the resources and training Mike and I learned to kind of keep Village Hall up and running. Do I cover this now or do I wait till the next motion?
Well,
That, Madam Mayor,
yeah.
that basically is the EOP summary of the plan.
My problem is how do we approve a summary if we don't know the plan? Which the plan is very thick.
It's 178 pages.
Yeah, I personally, I know when I first became mayor, we discussed about, because our plan was never updated.
The last one was 2020.
Well, after, yeah, when we discussed it before. But my thought is I'd like to read it at one point and see. I don't want you to go through 170 pages or how many pages it is, but I find it hard to approve a summary if I haven't read the meat and potatoes yet.
Okay.
That's just my thoughts on that. Does anybody have any thoughts?
Yeah,
on
I
that?
think maybe it could be included in our mailbox, we can review it, and then we can.
For the next
go from
meeting?
there instead of going through that 2-hour presentation.
So my question would be, instead of printing 170 pages, let's be environmentally friendly, and email it or put it on a fob or something, so each trustee
I have
can...
one copy that's available that can be in your office at 7:30 in the morning.
One copy, though, I'll take the copy, but I mean, and if anybody else wants to physically read it, you know,
I
on the
could put it
paper,
on,
but
yes.
maybe we can get them on fob, so then the trustees can take it home and read it at their leisure on their computer,
No problem at all.
save a tree.
So you're saying you want to table this?
That's my recommendation, only because I can't approve a summary if I don't know what I'm... Before we table, could I make a couple...
Madam Mayor, may I?
Oh, okay, so hold on, so it was Mason first.
That's correct. We went through this with our Public Services and Safety Committee. Updates are necessary to address village changes and operations as they are required by federal and state mandates. This is something that needed to be updated. I don't disagree with the board of having visual of it. It is 172 pages. Ron and I have gone over a lot of it. I am not the professional. Lieutenant Piazza helps, the fire chiefs help. If you've ever sat in these meetings, they're very, as Trustee Consolino knows, it's at a professional level, and all their input is vital. And Ron has been doing a great job, outstanding job actually, bringing us up to speed, making us current. Some of this stuff is not even FOIA-able because of the nature of, so I don't mind the board seeing it, and we can hold it, Ron, if you don't mind, for a later date. I'll make a motion or rescind my motion to give the board time to digest it. But this is something that needs to be updated. And I just want to give Ron and an attaboy too, because he's gotten us several grants. He's doing more than rewriting our standard operating or emergency operating procedures. Ron's been doing an outstanding job, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Stylen, you were second.
I'll rescind my motion.
Wait, whoa.
Okay.
Trustee Stylen, did you have any?
I was just wondering, you said it's 170 plus pages, but are the updates?
72.
So I went through all of the 12 original annexes just to make sure everything was still current. Then we added the 6 annexes that are these that are due to the state pushes out, I'm going to paraphrase and call it a rubric, that everything on that rubric has to be included in the plan for our plan to be approved. So these were the 6 additions that I got through the assistance of Will County's emergency management. They handed us a lot of templates, and then we customized the templates to the village.
I was just wondering if we could reduce it down, but that's okay.
I could compare it to what it previously was, but the 6 annexes, I'd estimate, were about another 20 to 25 pages.
Okay, no worry.
Trustee McNaughton?
No, I would appreciate that also.
Trustee Consolino?
Okay, no, I completely agree with Trustee Mason that, that they're doing their due diligence on that board. But, when we were first elected, we got copies. We all need to have an updated copy regardless. I don't care how many pages it is, I still have my old outdated copy. When I was looking at the plan, when it went out with the meeting minutes, there's a couple changes that we need to do. And I just wanted to make these suggestions on the board now so that everybody kind of is on the same page. We absolutely need to have, what do they call the phone tree now? Because I know it's changed several times. We had several different types of phone tree.
Ready?
But yeah, so the fire chiefs had theirs, then there was one from the village manager. The goal when we did the safety subcommittee, we wanted to have one that included us, okay, where everybody needs to be on just one text blast. Doesn't have to be going back and forth, but we have to have an information blast that goes to everybody presiding on this board when there's emergency. I had expressed my concerns a few months ago because with how our weather's become extreme every year now, and it's climate change, whatever you want to consider it, but we are having more severe springs and summers and more severe tornadoes and rains. We get a lot of flooding. We just had the microbursts. This is something that we have to figure out exactly who we're going to notify, how and why. I agree with some of these, with the concept of operations, but there needs to be some changes. I think it's the 3rd one down. This is on the last page, Ron. Village trustees should become trained. After being elected, need to be trained, and it should be within a few months. This is something that should, and it's what happened when we came on the board. There also needs to be continued training throughout our terms on the dais. So that needs to be added in there, and there has to be specific dates for when this training should occur after they're elected. These have to be, they're very vague, and they need to be, because of in case of emergency, everybody needs to be on the same page here. I can't stress the importance on that. Village trustees should inquire with the village manager. No, I don't agree with that at all for support roles. Village trustees, all of us should each have a role that's designated to us. This way there's no miscommunication. There's no trying to reach, oh, what can I do? No. If everybody has a designated role, then there's no mistakes. There's less room for errors. You're talking about emergency situations. And you know, we can also look at what other towns have incorporated because it's part of what the plan is that we're on. So maybe we should be looking at their concept of organization. I feel like this just needs to be more detailed. So I'm okay with tabling and working on the details with this. I also would like to know what we have for storms, emergency storm. Like, we haven't received anything new lately. I want to know what the plan is if there is a massive tornado that comes through Homer Glen. We need that just as much as our residents have to know that we're capable and know what we're doing in case there's an emergency. So these are just my requests. I don't know, did anybody else have any?
Well, that would be my job to ask them. Are you done? Yes. Trustee Fialko?
Yes, 2 years ago, I believe it was, the previous person in your spot had given a presentation.
Would you mind turning your microphone on, please?
Thank you. That's not too often I do that. Leave it off. 2 years ago, we were given a presentation. We were given a booklet, and it was a 2-hour presentation. It was long. It was done under a workshop at first, I believe, and then we approved it. But it also does say in here, and I don't know if it's this state statute. I haven't looked it up, but in here it does say it should be updated on an annual basis, right? And then when it's the National Incident Management System, NIMS, or NIMS, the emergency management, I don't know where that line is drawn with training. It does speak about it a little bit here, the basic training. Is it supposed to be on an annual basis along with updating this on an annual basis, or is it supposed to just be when you first come in and you get trained and that's usually good except for the updates? I'm not real familiar with this, and obviously because I'm not familiar with it, and it sounds like maybe a few of us others here aren't familiar with it, we should probably kind of know that. You know, what's the requirement on an annual basis for training? Are we already trained? So that would be my concern.
Thank you. Trustee Steiler? Did I call you already?
You did, but I'm confused because we're talking about L7 or, oh no, never mind. L6, okay.
Trustee McNaughton, did I call on you?
Nothing additional.
Okay. So,
but they're referencing.
So they're asking us, yeah, so what the motion is to approve the, wait, what was the motion?
So we're on L6.
We're both kind of together.
They're kind of together, but one is to consider for approval of the village operations plan. Okay, yeah, so the plan, so we've had a few emergencies in my short term so far, and I would have we had met once before to go over the changed plan, that the newest plan, but not this one. And so we've had a few emergencies since we met the last time. I do think it's important that all the trustees are trained. That was one of my questions, or how the phone line works, or how this works, because there's been little emergencies that Lieutenant Piazza and I had discussed, and then I give to Joe, and then Joe disperses it. I have worries about OMA. So if we're all on the same thing of something of like a nature that happens, then we have to discuss it later. It might be, I just worry about certain matters. But I also think it's important that that we have time to digest this, because I have some questions too. So that's all. So my recommendation is to table this right now until we have the opportunity to read it. I don't want it printed until we have all the changes. That's why I'm asking if to go on a fob first. And then once it is approved, then we can print one for everybody.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation. Trustee Mason, you made the motion, and Trustee Steilen, you made the second.
So I will rescind my motion and motion to table for a later date.
And I'll second. Is there any more discussion on the tabling? Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Mason?
Aye.
Trustee Steilen?
Aye.
Trustee Consolino? Aye. Trustee Fialko?
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton?
Aye.
And then the next motion is regarding to the procedures of standard operating procedures of 17, which Mr. Cuss was just about to touch base on. So is there a motion to consider is there a motion to table?
I'll make that motion.
The village board standing operating procedure.
I'll make that motion because I believe it rides right along with motion 6 prior.
So Mason and Consolino, is there any more discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll on that.
For tabling, correct?
Yes.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee Fialko.
May I ask a question about tabling? This came up with the attorneys. You need to either say indefinitely, or we need to put a date, like the next meeting. We can't just table without defining.
Yeah, I get that, but...
So next meeting, or
We have counsel answer.
Yes.
Counsel?
Minister?
Yes.
Sure. No, you can just say table. What I always tell people, if you know when you want to hear it again, to save yourself the inconvenience of doing the two-part motion like we were having to do earlier tonight, is you'd say, I move to continue this to the September blah, blah, blah meeting, if you know what date you want to have it reheard, and that way the clerk knows to automatically put it on the new agenda for that date. If you don't do that, you just table something, then you have to do a motion to pull it from the table. So if you're not sure, if you have to review documents, the staff has to get you things, and there may be a communication process where you're proposing amendments and things like that, table's not a bad idea, but if you know for certain that you want to hear this again at the next board meeting, the better method then would be to continue it to the next meeting.
And we don't know.
I just don't know how much time.
Can we ask Ron if he'd be ready for the next board meeting, so we don't have to
We
pull it
won't be
from the
ready.
table?
We won't be ready.
No? Okay.
So you were on me, and I for tabling, yes.
Thank you. Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 8, consider for approval an ordinance granting a variance to permit a mix of stone and fiber standards, 75-67A, applicably in scope, type of building or structure of the code of the Village of Homer Glen for certain real property located in the R1 Single Family Residential District at 14530 West 143rd Street, Homer Glen, Illinois.
I'll make that motion.
McNaughton, Trustee
I'll
McNaughton,
second.
Trustee Fialko, Trustee McNaughton.
Yeah, no, I've looked through all the information, all the supporting documentation. Everything seems to be in order. The house looks fantastic, and willing to move ahead.
Trustee Fialko.
We've been through these several times. This is acceptable, and that's all I've got.
Is there any more discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, I'm going to read L9. Is there a motion? All right, hold on. Well, it's two parts, 9A. Is there a motion to approve or to pull from the table HG 2317 PUD?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion on pulling? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? All right, is there a motion for approval and ordinance granting 1, a final plat of subdivision, 2, a major amendment to a special use permit for Stonebridge Woods Planned Unit Development PUD, and 3, a map amendment from C3 General Business to A1 Agriculture for certain real property located on the portion of Lot 80 of the Stonebridge Woods PUD, Homer Glen, Illinois, legally described in Exhibit A, and 1, a final plat of consolidation, 2, a variance to reduce the lot area from 10 acres to 2.5 acres, 3, a variance to reduce the lot width and the lot frontage from the required 330 feet to 200 feet, and 4, a variance to increase the rear setback for the accessory structure from 10 feet to 30 feet for certain real property located in the A1 Agricultural District at 13955 West 159th Street, Homer Glen, Illinois, described in Exhibit B, HG 2317 PUD, subject to the following conditions. 1, process of final plat for review and approval by the Board of Trustees for final recording. I think that's the only condition, is that correct? I only have 1, but I don't know if it continues. It says
I'll make that motion.
all righty.
I'll second.
Second, Trustee Fialko. Trustee Fialko, do you have any comments?
You know what, the Planning Commission was in total support of this, 6-0. I have no problems with that, that's all.
Trustee McNaughton,
Plan Commission, unanimous. Thank you so much.
any further discussion?
There were some questions from residents, but I think because we had nothing to tell them yet about what kind of development was going on there, that they seem to be okay with it.
Any other further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
We do a
opposed?
roll call.
No. I can? I have to? I was told last time I didn't have to.
This is the actual.
Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
Aye.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
See, the two attorneys are debating right now, just so everybody knows.
I was on time for the meeting. I was here at 5:40. I just had to go back.
All right, number 10, consider for approval payment of the Village Homer Glen June legal bills for Peterson, Johnson, and Murray in the amount of $32,267. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee McNaughton.
I'll second.
Trustee Mason. McNaughton, do you have any discussion? Trustee
No, I
McNaughton.
don't, thank you.
Trustee Mason.
I don't even have to ask Mr. Baber. I know he's looked it over, so I'm good to go.
Any more discussion?
Yes.
Trustee Fialko?
Just so everybody knows, in admin and finance, Joe was asked the question. Joe reviewed this, and we've got a lot of things going on in the village, so that's why it's a little more expensive. So, although I would like to say that we reviewed in A&F our budget for legal counsel last year. It was $175,000, and we were at $100,000. And now I think we're somewhere just over 1/3. John Sawyer's told us we're at $57,000, or we were at $57,000 at that meeting, and our budget is $150,000. So
That's good. So that doesn't mean you have more room to spend.
And the budget was reduced, he said, because of, that's correct.
Is there any more discussion?
Nope, not from me.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Trustee McNaughton.
Aye.
Trustee Mason.
Aye.
Trustee Consolino.
No.
Trustee Fialko.
Aye.
Trustee Stylen.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, old business. Anybody have anything for old business?
I do.
Trustee Mason.
I heard a resident earlier tonight state that I was confused or didn't know or didn't have information available. That's not the case. I read through the packet thoroughly many times because it's come in front of us. I was not approving whether they could build it or not because that was done in 2021. There was not a doubt in my mind. I knew what I was doing. I was abstaining because I'm tired of the township and the village being at each other's throat. There was an annexation agreement on file that was prior to me. Some of this board may have been here, but I was not. That annexation agreement does not give me the right to deny them. I am tired of the township threatening, which our supervisor did that night at the podium, to sue us if we weren't in agreement. I think I pretty much voiced my opinion that night by abstaining. I don't want the taxpayers at the township level to have to pay for the litigation to sue the village, and then the village taxpayers to have to pay to fight it. That's not why I ran for office. We voted on what type of building, what kind. Now, they have to follow the ordinance. They have to stay within their limits, but I was not voting on whether they could build it or not. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Is there any more old business?
Yes.
Trustee Fialko?
Just to cap that off, Trantina Farm and the information that was out there was 600 pages or more. There was a lot of information there, and I think the thing was done right. Again, I will reiterate that this village, that project just is not for the just Homer Glen. It takes in the township, which is 41,000 some people. In the village, we have 24,500. So this is going to benefit more than just Homer Glen. Again, I said we didn't have a park district building. This will kind of fulfill that role. And I think just give it time, and sometimes just like when certain building projects go on here and people are upset in the beginning, but in the end, when they see the finished product and how it benefits the community, I think then it's seen in a different set of eyes at that point once it's completed. So I think that was the right thing to do at that time. Mosquitoes in Homer Glen, they have found in Will County, Zika and West Nile virus. Now, the towns haven't been described, but it's been in the patch, it's been in all the newspapers. So with that out there, please protect yourselves accordingly. And that would be it for me.
Any more old business?
I'll wait till new business to kind of go off of what Dan was saying.
Okay, new business.
New business, mosquito abatement. Trustee Stylen had asked me to bring mosquito abatement to Environment Committee. So I had a very lengthy discussion with my committee members last week. You know, it's tough, and I said this to Trustee Stylen, to figure out what benefit, you know, you get a few people that are upset and complaining about chemicals. you know, please don't get me wrong, I'm very sensitive about the chemicals. I am on the Environment Committee. I do notice and I do believe that, you know, it can be harmful to our environment. But, you know, when we're looking at a village of over 20 or close to 25,000 people, you know, with seniors and children being the most vulnerable to all these mosquito-borne, diseases, and like, you know, Trustee Fialco just pointed out, you know, where's the happy medium? You want to protect everybody. So I did talk to my very passionate committee, and surprisingly, everybody was overwhelmingly opposed to getting rid of abatement or bringing it to a referendum. They thought it would fail terribly. You know, it's the same things that I had suggested with you via email that, you know, we felt maybe being more informative and educational and addressing it via our website, giving out as much, you know, like what kind of chemicals are being used, what are the effects, and where people can opt out. I definitely think that, you know, and I did address Amy Blank and let her know that we would like to go forward with that. Is there anything else from this board that they would like to add to that?
Again, that's my job. That's okay.
So, you know, like now would be a good time to give me those suggestions and so that we can work on a page with Ms. Blank.
So we're on new business, and I'm going to piggyback off what you said. It's actually on one of the things I wanted to talk about. I've asked Mr. Baber to look into our mosquito spray company to find out the exact details, what is in use in the spray, because I do get tagged almost every day on the mosquito spray. So I did ask Joe to look into it, and from what I understand, it's safe. It's a more natural, safer way. I guess it's the safest spray out there. Joe, if you want to, after you're done choking, talk about it.
Thank you. I believe some of that information's already on our website.
It is.
You know, in regards to the safe use of the pesticides and things like that. So I'll take a look. I'll talk to Amy, and we'll take another look again. But I think a lot of that information currently is on there. We had gotten it from Clark. There's, I think, a pretty good in-depth report that's available, but maybe we'll just get on a better page, so it's out there a little bit easier to access.
Yeah, just something if we could post it on Facebook, because that seems to be where people go. People don't seem to go to our website as much.
Okay.
So something on Facebook.
All right.
Does anybody else have anything on the mosquitoes?
Could I?
I've only been bit once this summer.
Mosquitoes, any more mosquito stuff?
Well, with the mosquito stuff, you know, like another thing that was requested was, could we make it, you know, like, it is on the all that information is on there, but it's kind of hidden. I had explained this to Trustee Fialco. So if we could make just one page that's very simplistic so people could understand it. You could also put something on social media, but it's better to have an opt-out link for our residents that do not want to have spraying near their property. You know, but yes, what I read too was that it was the safest that we could possibly use. So that's about it.
I'm unsure about that opt-out. Yes, Joe?
May I just, actually, on one of the nights after the fest, you know, going home at 12 o'clock at night or whatever it was, I was behind one of the trucks, and what they do is they just drive down the middle of the street, and it was, you know, big fog, you know. I rolled up my windows, made sure, but yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would opt out of that service.
There is opt-out options through, I mean, like, in all honesty, is it not going to travel into their yard? No. But if that makes somebody feel better to be able to have the option to opt out, I would like them to have it, as long as the service provides. You know, and the other thing too is, you got to understand, when you look at the CDC and you look at Will County Health Department, they strongly encourage abatement. So there's a reason. So that's why I said I would rather defer to the higher, you know, municipalities on that. So, okay.
Okay. All right. Any more new business? Trustee Stylam?
I just wanted to say thank you to Trustee Consolino for taking that to the committee, because I just get a lot of calls, and I just think our residents need to know that we did reconsider it.
I understand.
So thank you.
Any more new
The
business?
presentation on, I've asked for it to be moved to the front page of our village website so Penny can defer calls to that website. It's about a 15-minute presentation. It's not that long. Jack Themish gives all the information, where the documents are, the MSDS, everything, and his own number for people to call. And I believe there is an opt-out feature. But just like you're saying. It sprays, it goes all. The other thing is our contract, I believe it's for a couple of years out. We're locked into a contract, and it was negotiated with the township because we're all together for a lower price, and I think they saved $10,000 at that time. So it was just renegotiated a year and a couple months ago. So I just want to say that. But the opt-out feature and like Jennifer or Trustee Castellino is saying, having some extra pages available for people to kind of click on and print and have that in hand might be better than just the video showing the papers.
15-minute presentation on mosquitoes seems like 2 hours to me.
No?
I'd be curious to see that contract if we're in it with Homer Township. I'd be curious to know if Lamont, New Lenox, and Lockport are in that same agreement as well. All right, any more new business? Because I do have some.
I have one more item from Environment that I'd like to bring up. And sadly, like Trustee Reinders is not here tonight, but Dan and I had talked about this last week after my meeting. You know, we currently have the new tree memorial program. And so we had a resident that came and approached to my committee. She's very heartfelt. She felt that our prices were just too high. So she'll only be able to afford the plaque. So we were sitting on her application. We approved it, but we're kind of got it in limbo right now. She noticed, and we do know this exists with across the board, like some of these other towns around us have like foundations, okay? So they offset the price because they have money from other things. You guys, you probably don't know this, but I have the smallest budget out of all the committees. And a few years ago, I gave up an extra 10%, FYI. And I believe it went to Parks, but Dan couldn't remember. So, you know, I would really like to see this tree memorial program take off. People wanted this for a very, very long time. It took several years in the making to figure everything out after COVID. A lot of our costs are higher. We don't have funding to help offset it with. Costs were higher because it was almost impossible after COVID to find certain trees that we could give to people. Benches are not an option for two reasons. They are completely out of reach for cost. They're just not cost efficient. And if they get damaged, unfortunately, in our parks, then we have to replace that. They're too expensive. So we went with I'm blanking out right now, with the stones and with the markers and then with the trees. And so we went a little on the higher end because we figured if we have to replace them or we have to replace the tree, we're doing that at our own cost. You know, we have our own tree plantings. You know, like, and this was Dan's suggestion. Trustee Fialco mentioned that, you know, well, maybe we could use it from the common fund to help offset. And, you know, like how we give people free trees every year. Maybe we could do that. This is benefiting our parks. This is a great benefit to us. It goes along with our mission, with the community. And because it's going to our parks, it's also beautifying. I would like to see if maybe parks could assist with maybe coming up with a little money to help offset because they're the ones that get the motor fuel tax fund, or seeing if we could get some money out of the common fund and designate so many trees. And for the first so many applicants that come, then their trees could be planted and they could purchase a marker to put in our parkways. So I would like the board to kind of consider that because if we do this, this is something that would come before the board.
What is the environmental budget?
I would have to check.
I can't believe it's less than ability awareness or.
Maybe a smidge more, maybe. It's pretty small.
One, so I don't know how much.
It's pretty small, like what we use out of our budget, you know, like when we do stargazing. So we afford, you know, the stuff that we do in the community room. Like we really broke the bank this year by spending $1,500 to get that sloth, you know, and people loved it. Like these are those little things, and then it's for tree planting. So we really don't, you know what I mean, use much of a budget, and that's why I didn't mind downgrading what we had a few years ago. But now with this tree memorial program, I think a lot of people would benefit from it, and people are looking at much leaner times. I think it would be beneficial.
I do think a lot of our committees overlap. Like when the Ability Awareness Committee wanted a park swing, I think parks should help out since it should be all inclusive. So I do think we all overlap in a way. So yes.
I think if it is benefiting our parks, these tree planting programs, that we can cross over some of the other budgets and find funding for it. Is it, Trustee Castellino, is it my understanding then the person purchases the plaque Okay, so the cost
They have the
of
option to
tree-
just get the plaque, they have the option to just get a tree, they have an option to get both.
So if we provide the tree, you think the program would work more effectively?
Yes, but the trees can be expensive.
I agree. But we can,
So that's what I'm saying. What we're looking at for right now, I'm being very meager. I'm asking if maybe we could just give an inch to
I'm
help
sure.
offset it, make it more affordable.
I'm sure we
May I make a suggestion?
Well, hold on. Councilino, are you done?
Yes.
Trustee Mason?
Thank you, sorry. If we run into a scenario where it's too expensive, because trees can be, I've planted a lot of them, maybe we take a tree that's already there and dedicate it with the plaque. And then this way, we reduce the costing.
The only concern we have to worry about with that is because some of these trees only last about 10 years.
Right.
So
But I
then we
think
would just
know-
have to be willing to replace it.
Yeah, and you can look at, I mean, I know, I'm not a horticulturalist by any means, but I know pretty much a lot of the species, and I'm sure somebody in our parks, like Jennifer Victori, would know the life expectancy of a tree. Like if you get a ash tree, I mean, you're looking at a short time period, but you could get some sort of aspen, and it could grow.
Yeah, I can't remember, we have a list of what we've
Say
offered.
point of order, this is
So
not
the-
like a discussion back
So
and
the
forth.
point was, Mayor, maybe in order to save the taxpayer dollars, if somebody can't afford it, maybe we can designate a tree for that person that's already there.
And I love how you two are discussing, maybe call each other and discuss it later. Just, we got the ideas going, I think, I just want to keep moving. Was there any other new business?
No, ma'am.
I do have a couple of things. I know I discussed before at some point, I would like to see on the next agenda, Veterans Day event. Konos Corn Maze usually hosts the Veterans Day with support from the village. No finances are ever contributed from the village. In fact, all the funds raised go back to the village to support the veterans, the American Legion, and any Veterans Day thing that we have, or veterans, whatever we have. So I'd like to see that on the next meeting. And the reason we have to put it on the next meeting is because the board needs to have approval to have an event held offsite. The other thing is, one of the questions had come up since Trustee Falco brought it up earlier about the Homerfest committee. I was going to ask the attorneys, since Trustee Falco would be removed from the Homerfest committee, and we have a remaining trustee that doesn't chair a committee, have you had a chance to look at the ordinance? Does a trustee have to chair a committee?
Madam Mayor, I don't have an answer to that right now, but I'll look at it. I don't recall specifically, ma'am.
Okay. My next question is, there were some questions on shortening our meetings. We did pretty good tonight, which I'm pretty proud of. I don't know how long executive session is going to take, but I know it was brought up, so I'd like to see recommendations submitted to Mr. Baber before the next meeting, a week. So if we can get it done in the next week, so we can have it on a possible discussion for either maybe a workshop or an agenda item or some sort. I have some quick suggestions, which I just want to touch base on so the trustees get their minds going. I say that we move the reports from the trustees to the end. I know that there was discussion of shortening the reports. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that. I do think that public comment may be split. If there's a public comment pertaining to items on the agenda, those should go first. And then any public comments that are pertaining to anything else should go at the end.
We had
I'm aware. And then if there's any other comments, or anything else, we can just all submit to Joe. I'd really like to get this taken care of as soon as possible. The other thing I had a question on was, or comment on, was there's so many Homer Facebook pages, so many Facebook pages that have the name Homer Glen in them. There's a lot of fake pages out there. I think it's our village's responsibility to make sure that our Homer Glen, the Village of Homer Glen municipal page is the only page that, we can't stop people from using it, but there's a lot of misinformation put out on these other fake sites that people host, and a lot of derogatory comments. So I just think that the village needs to really get out there and promote our specific page to the residents, new residents, businesses, whoever there are. I know I got an email today from a resident because on our page, We do have a resident who, some fake profiles that like to go on there and put misinformation under our posts. Sorry, Sue, but you were the last victim of that.
That's 4 times.
We've all been there. We have some residents that just like to put stuff on there. We can't delete comments from residents. It's against the rules. So just so everybody knows that there are some residents and fake profiles out there that like to do those things. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is, would you mind touching base on what form of government we are? Because when trustees became on board, we got a binder, and there's a lot of misinformation in that binder. And after doing a lot of due diligence, I know the comments were made that, I forgot what it was called, either the trustee council or manager, trustee, manager, council form of government.
Management form of
Council, but it was interused intermittently a couple times, but we are, what type of form of government are we?
You are the village president trustee form of government. You have a village manager that you adopted by ordinance. It's not unusual that it's confusing to people, because Mr. Pressman and I get asked about this all the time from our municipal clients. There is a provision called the managerial form of government in the Illinois Constitution and the compiled statutes. It's called Article 5, managerial form of government. We typically call that council manager form, but the only way you can be a council manager form is if you do it by referendum. There are municipalities that, like Homer Glen, have adopted by ordinance the position of village manager, but in those instances, they do it that way. That's under the Constitution and under the case law that's been interpreting the Constitution. They've held that the mayor, who's in a mayor or village president trustee form, is the chief executive, and then the trustees would be basically the legislature, to give you the common analogy. The mayor has the authority under the municipal code to hire employees, of course, like here in Homer Glen, with the advice and consent of the village board, but the laws have been interpreted by many courts to say that the mayor has that authority to hire a village manager if that position has been created, as it has here, but that you're not a true managerial form of government unless you adopt it by referendum. So an example of a nearby community that did do it by referendum is the village of Orland Park. They are the true managerial form of government. They did it by referendum in the late 1980s, if I'm not mistaken, and they just had a referendum question on the last municipal election to rescind that and go back to a strong mayor form of government, and it failed miserably, 2-1. But this village is not the Article 5 managerial form of government. So then by default, what it is the village president trustee form. So in that instance, like I said, the village president serves as the CEO of the village, and with the assistance of her manager that was hired pursuant to ordinance, runs the day-to-day affairs of the village, and then the 6 trustees serve as legislators.
Thank you.
Sure.
So with,
Continue with it just one more tier, if you don't mind.
what do you mean?
Well, with that said, and I've done some reading myself recently, and when it comes to board meetings, I'm all about free speech and everything else, but if we're tearing back the pages and looking in depth as to how we operate, it also says our chair of our meeting is not supposed to be involved in debate. Now, I'm not exactly against that, but I also like having when we have people come up to the podium, outside of that, really, they should be speaking during public comment, and either we're going to let all people come up to the podium that are petitioners, and we should get to ask them questions, or we're not going to do that at all. We can't have it both ways. You weren't here for the last meeting. And the thing is, I read into it a little bit, and the way it calls for is technically, we're doing it a little bit different than the way it's prescribed. And so as long as we're tearing back the page, and that said, for the chair, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the way I've read it, the chair really doesn't participate in the debate between the trustees. You manage that conversation, but you don't give your opinion in that process. And now, if you now find something different under this other thing you're saying, and the other thing is, I haven't heard that you said that when we became a village, that wasn't done under Article 5. And I'm guessing that you somehow have found something that our Article 5 wasn't done, so that's my question.
Just to touch base on what you just said, Trustee Fiocco, that's why I want to entertain maybe a workshop. I don't know if we want to do it now or we want to wait to a new board in April or get everyone situated to have a workshop to understand, because I think as we add more trustees or change in or out, or when people change, I think we just kind of adapt to the rules that have been taken place. I do agree that sometimes that the mayor shouldn't involve themselves in debate, but we're also involving staff and others to be involved in debate too. So I think if one is asked and it goes this way, I just think if we're going to do this, let's do it professionally, let's do it the proper way, let's follow the proper channels with the attorney's advice. And I know Mr. Pasquinelli's itching to say something. What you got?
If I can, ma'am. Just to what Trustee, it's to answer Trustee Fialco's question. So early on, right when I started getting involved and sitting at the dais here with everyone here, I had gone through research and I asked Mr. Baber to get me copies of various ordinances from the inception of the creation of this village so that I knew what the duties and responsibilities of all the board members and the duties and responsibilities of the village manager and so on were. And what we found was the ordinance 2601 dated July 3rd, 2001, which is an ordinance that created the position of village manager. And that ordinance was duly ratified and duly authorized, and it also created the job position of Joe and also had the duties and responsibilities of Joe in there. There was no referendum that was included with this. It was simply created by ordinance. So what does that mean? That means that some of the executive authority of the office of the mayor was, by the mayor's consent, so to speak, by way of this ordinance, was granted to the village manager to perform various duties. And that's what you have. So down the road, if, for instance, the board decided collectively, hey, we're going to remove these obligations from the village manager, we're going to put them elsewhere, you can certainly do that by way of an ordinance. By way of a referendum, you can't do it that way. When a referendum comes through, the executive authority of the mayor's office gets transferred by operation of law by that referendum to the office of the village manager. The village manager becomes, for all intents and purposes, the chief executive. The mayor maintains her status of being the presiding officer at the village board meetings and also maintains the office of liquor commissioner, but all other executive authority pretty much is transferred by operation of law to the village manager. That's not the form of government you have. By ordinance, some of the mayor's authority has been granted through ordinance to Mr. Baber to perform all those functions that your ordinance says that he's to perform. And in the future, if you want to modify it, you can. I think that several board meetings back, or maybe 6 board meetings back, you did modify it a little bit. Or if you want to add more duties to him, you can. But there's no referendum per se that's out there that we were able to find that created that office by way of referendum.
I have a question, since we're in discussion. Mr. Carroll and Mr. Pasquinelli, can you please provide for us this in writing? And can you show me where it states this and when we incorporated in April of 2021?
So that's part of why I wanted to have a workshop, so we can provide all the information, because I know, I don't want any
I think
new...
we should have a very public workshop.
I agree. I don't want bad habits to start forming with new people, or let's just try to fix the past, because I know there's tendencies of sometimes trustees asking directly to staff to do X amount of homework, which they can be doing themselves. I want the trustees to know what their responsibilities, what their obligations, and what their rights are. I don't think the trustees have to FOIA information either. They should be able to have it. Granted, they don't get it on demand or don't have access to everything, but just like as Mr. Attorney Pasquinelli stated, with the liquor licenses, you guys have the right to increase or decrease, but the rule says that the mayor gets to pick who gets it, but I don't think it would be fair not to tell you who's come before me to get one, so I'd like to be able to provide that information to you so you can decide if you want to increase or decrease. So it's those sort of things. I want everyone to understand the process of how things work. And maybe even a little ordinance review of what they found on why we got where we are. And I also would like for Joe to have a clear description of what his responsibilities are, what mine are, and what all of our rights are. So I'd just like it to be a fresh start, everyone understand their lane, and go from there. So if we can put that on for the 2 attorneys, with one or both, or however we want to do this. I don't want their attorney fees to go up, but,
Madam Mayor, actually, that's something
It's
that
gonna get
Michael,
denied.
Mr. Carroll did,
Okay.
did a lot of work on it, I think, for his master's in education. So he'd probably be the best person suited to do it.
all right.
Administration. I'm sorry.
So if you can give us a date that you think you'd be prepared and ready to go for this, we can put it on a workshop. Perfect, yeah, perfect. Okay.
Better under a workshop, or would it be better under an executive session and then bring it out of?
I don't think you can bring it to executive session.
May I address that, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So the only way you could do it in executive session is if you do it under the guidance of a statewide organization.
Okay.
So that would be like IML or something. So otherwise, if I were to do it, then it would be an open meeting like Trustee Consolino suggested.
And then I forgot, Trustee Cancelino, you had made a statement about a foundation. Were you informed that the village was working on a foundation?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because I know you stated something about a foundation, so I want to make sure you were aware.
Yes,
Okay.
that's why we weren't told that we were working on a foundation. Director Baber had said during his village report one night that we were working on a 501(c) or 501(c)(3).
Same thing.
So that's why I asked, but there was nothing elaborated and nothing talked about since, so that's why I inquired with him in writing.
Okay, I just want to make sure you guys are getting the same information I am. That's part of this process. If I want to make sure that I'm not getting all of this information and then everyone's looking at me like I didn't know that, I want to make sure that we're all aware and all on the same page and have, the same information going into a
That
meeting.
should be in the minutes of the ANF meeting that was discussed publicly.
Okay, I just didn't know if you were aware because you brought it up, that was all. Okay, one last thing, I'm so sorry. The sports organizations are looking for assistance on some matters. I know they stated that they were going to present some quotes to the village on some things. Since we own the fields, since we own the park, they had brought up, and forgive me, I can't remember who wanted what, but there was a conversation of scoreboards, and then the other organization wanted something else. Have you received any of that information?
I have not.
Okay. So once you do get the information, would you please provide that to the staff so we can get it on the agenda and talk about that as well?
I will. Yep.
All right, anything else?
Didn't the sports organizations and one of, we talked about this in ANF too, try to put up a sign that for a restaurant on the land that we own, and are they getting any kind of
Talking about the creamery?
proceeds
The
from
creamery?
that? So I'm just listening to wanting scoreboards and things like this, but yet also using our land to promote other restaurants.
In ANF, that got tabled, so Ron Cuss, Bill Foster.
We were gonna dig into it a little bit more, so
this-
I kind of hope those two things go together. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Joe?
The restaurant, or the establishment that is providing services to the sports organization through their concession sales. So they're not just advertising, they're providing a service to the sports groups. I'm still investigating. Bill happens to be on vacation. I'm going to have conversations with the sports groups, find out, one of the questions was whether or not they're getting any proceeds from the sale of their business there. And then in regards to signs, and I am looking at also the sponsorship or signage that's on around the fencing of the ball fields and how that's being handled.
The other thing that was brought up, though, just so you know.
Is your mic on?
Is the fact that giving it to it's the football organization, right, Stallions, is creating a third-party agreement instead of going through the village with that agreement. So that is where the problem, that's why it got tabled. And this is what Joe is looking into and the Bill Foster is looking into, as to whether that should not, we in ANF did not think it should be a third-party agreement through the Stallions. It should come directly to the village as a contract.
So are we talking about the creamery here?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Baber and I had this discussion months ago, and I thought it was an agreement with the village. But the sports organization had nothing to do with it.
It's a resolution, currently it's a resolution that we passed in the spring for the one sport group to allow the creamery to sell at the concession stand.
Correct.
We did basically we came back for the football and we did the same thing, and now questions are arising. So I'm going to look at it a little bit more in depth. I believe I don't want to misquote, why in the spring we were able to do it. I think there may be something on our books in an ordinance form that's why we did it that way. I'm still researching that.
There's another, but it's a contract through the sports organization, not through the village. And the other part of that is, the contract is from May, January, February, March, April. It's from May. It's already enacted. They're out there doing a thing, and they didn't really have a contract to put together properly. And that's where A&F tabled it, so we can get it right.
Right, so I was under the impression that it was not a third party or sublease or whatever it is.
Definitely is.
But if it is a third party, then you need them to be named in the insurance as well.
Right, we discussed all of this, so I don't know where you guys are getting this information, but I was given different. So this is part of why I think we should all be on the same page. Speaking of, how long is the A&F meetings?
Hours.
How many hours?
About two.
Two. Okay, we're getting out of here about 9 o'clock. So there's no workshop. Do we need to go in executive session? Okay. Is there a motion to go into executive session for discussion regarding pending litigation and discussion regarding personnel?
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Fielko and Trustee McNaughton? Is that
Yes.
who? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No?
Oh, 9:30.
What were you voting, no? Yes. Okay.
Aye.
No, she said nay. Everyone else said aye.
We take a 5-minute break?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.